Hello, friends from the comic world. My name is Hector,
And my name is G.
and we are here today to talk to you about the collected editions that are going on sale on May 2023. Now, for those of you who don't know, G and I work for Penguin Random House, and we manage sales into the direct comic world around the world. So, the titles that we talk about in this video are from publishers and imprints that we can sell into that market. CG. Now
Yeah,
my voice is going away. In the previous video, it was yours.
it was
Um,
mine.
yeah. So, anyway, sorry about that. I also want to mention that we're in social media. We have the YouTube channel where this video lives, but also we have under at PRH International Comics, we have Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. So make sure to check us out. Let me talk a little bit about the format of these videos. So what we do with these monthly collected edition videos is we start with some picks from favorites from G and I, and we alternate and we talk about a few of them, and then we highlight some highly anticipated or um, titles that I think you definitely need to check out. And even though you need to check out the whole list, we do highlight some of them. And then after that, we'll leave you with the covers for the rest of the list for you to see as the slides go to and we'll put a little bit of background music so it's not too boring. So let's get started with this. And of course, it's not going to work. Here we go. First is your pick.
Yes. So my pick is basil and oregano. This is created by Melissa Crabellini. Crabellini? No, sorry. Uh,
Mm.
I should have researched the pronunciation prior to. I was gonna attempt it again, but no, I've already butchered it too much.
Melissa.
But
Melissa. Yeah.
Melissa.
Yes.
Melissa is on social media, so highly recommend. I mean, which creator these days isn't, but very active on social media, so definitely recommend checking them out. So this one is really cool because I love the naming of things that Melissa chooses. For instance, both of these characters here,
Sorry.
all good. Both of these characters here attend academy called Porta Bella Magic Culinary Academy, which is great. As the name implies, it's a school that mixes the art of cooking with magic. And Basil is like a top student, is determined to be the best of the best. But all of a sudden, this other student, Oregano, joins the academy her senior year. And Oregano is the daughter of a renowned chef. So there's a lot of pressure because of that. And you would think that there's going to be some sort of rivalry, maybe but like, things actually turned out where they flirt and they actually start liking each other. And so things are going well between the two of them. But then Basil senses that Oregano is hiding something and I don't know what it is. But whatever that secret is, which you'll have to find out as you're reading through it, it's it puts Basil in a situation where she has to make a decision of whether, and that decision could jeopardize her aspirations in her career. And so it's a very like it's a huge decision that would change the course of her life, basically. So this is that story. Highly recommend picking it up. It is one of my picks for the month of May.
Great. Very cool. I like that the
Mhm.
little dog, I think the head is supposed to be shaped like a tomato, maybe.
Oh yeah, 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 yeah.
Looks very cool.
Mhm.
And next, my first pick is Constellations by Kate Glasheen. Um, this is this is very cool. This is the person that you see here in the cover. It's Claire, and Claire has dealt with the issue, the question of, are you supposed to be a boy or a girl all their life? So since they were little, it's been, that question from family members, relatives, from school, anywhere that they went. And it obviously puts a lot of pressure on Claire. And during their years in high school, they are able to have a very good friend named Greg, who keeps them, gives them a solid person to hold on to. But they get into drinking to sort of drown down all the stress from this identity crisis that they're going. And it gets to a point where Claire can't control it. So Claire falls into this it has to take this mandatory um support group, rehab, sorry, the word escaped me. It's assigned to go to rehab, mandatory by court ordered. And there, Claire meets all these other people who have different issues with, addiction, alcohol, and all that, but are also outcasts. And the story is around that, about how Claire finds that, she's always felt like they felt like they were always outcasts, and they were always had this never never belong, but they found a place where they belong, and they realize that there are other people that are going through the same thing, and that, obviously, in the end, that's what you need to do to kind of find your support group. In this case, very literal, but you can also find it in other places. Now, another cool thing about this is that the story is set in 1980s Troy, New York, and the author and illustrator, Kate Glasheen, was born and raised in Troy, New York in the 80s. So obviously, they made this sort of a biographical memoir kind of thing. So I'm sure they put in a lot of personal experience into this. I don't know about the drinking. I don't know. I'm just going by what it says about the author being born and raised in Troy, New York. But highly recommended. I think it's definitely going to be sweet. It's going to be very it's young adult, but it's very sincere, and I think it deals with a lot of issues that a lot of people have dealt with, obviously since the 80s and before, and still dealing with now, which is who am I and where do I belong? So highly recommend this one.
So my next pick is Dark Spaces
Yes.
Wildfire. This is by the creative team of Scott Snyder on writing, and then Hayden Sherman with illustrations. And if you didn't know, Dark Spaces is part of the IDW Originals line. And this Wildfire is the start of this, I would say, like this. I don't want to say series, but it kind of is, in the sense where there's going to be
Yeah.
other stories that fall under Dark Spaces. But definitely for sure, we have Scott Snyder, who is starting the helm of it with this particular story. And it's about a crew of women from an inmate firefighting program, and their newest recruit is a convict with very shady connections. But that recruit discovers, while they're outside doing their normal activities, that they're only like a few miles, like within walking distance of their former crooked associate's abandoned mansion. And so the recruited convict is like, look, there's an opportunity here. And the team must decide on whether or not they should drop everything, including the program, which guarantees them, as long as they work hard and show that they're doing well, it will give them like a surefire proof or path, I should say, to normalcy, if they're like a good, uh, if they're doing well in the program, they could go back to their almost as normal as it could possibly be a normal life. So it's like a path that will have like a concrete future. So either they stick to that path or drop it entirely uh, for this heist thing that they have brewing, and the heist could also change your lives in significant ways. So it's like the moral dilemma of that. And this is very like character centric. So you have like profiles, like you really get the sense of understanding who these characters are. And as I was saying earlier, this is the wildfire of Scott Snyder's Dark Spaces story. But following this, there are going to be other creative teams, writers as well, who's going to contribute to Dark Spaces. And the concept of this line, the Dark Spaces line, is just to inspect or sort of look at different perspectives of people, of desperate people in desperate situations in confined spaces, hence dark spaces. So it's a really interesting line. So definitely look out for future dark spaces stories. But this one is also really interesting. As you'll see, some of the images that were flipped through, what is very that I really like about this particular story is the unique layout of in the paneling here, which is amazing. And
Yeah.
I do want to point out that it's not random. It's not like like someone just trying to like randomly like do something different with the layout. It makes sense in the context of the story. There is a purpose behind the layout. Um, you're not seeing it here, but there is like this image within the um, interior pages where it's almost as if the panels are sort of disappearing or like fizzing out into a void, which is
Mm.
really cool. It contributes to the story. So I like that about the art here. Hayden Sherman does a wonderful job. So this is something that you should definitely check out, especially to have like in this collected edition as well, so you could see it and really soak in the beautiful artwork here.
Yeah. Excellent. Very, very cool. Next up, one of my picks for this month is Elephant Man 2261, Volume 1. Is it written by Richard Starkings and illustrated by Alex Medellin? And this is sort of a continuing stories that Richard Starking wrote about the Elephant Man since I think it's 2006. It's over 15 years. But most of the stories were under Image, and now this is coming out. This one specifically is under Dark Horse, and it's a collection of this one, Elephant Man 2261, uh, which was published in Dark Horse. Now, the story is very simple, straightforward. Is this mad scientist creates these creatures that are part human, part animal, and he has this secret lab in Africa where he takes animals from the African continent and mixes them in with human and create these ultimate soldiers, basically. It's the story is described as sort of a blend between Blade Runner and Planet of the Apes. It's about, like I said, it's a story that has been around for over 15 years with a lot of issues. I think it's over 80 issues in total with everything together. And so it goes from the beginning and how the Elephant Men are created to what they're used for and beyond. And I think this story is more about what the Elephant Men do after the war that they were created for is over, and but they're still, trying to work as mercenaries and other stuff. Now, I do want to mention Richard Starking's story and his story with Elephant Man is as interesting as the premise of the book, because Richard Stocking was worked for DC, worked for Marvel UK. Then he became one of the editors and came to the US. And he was a letterer, and he became really famous as a letterer. And so much so that he created a style of lettering, and he was one of the first people to do it digitally. But then he sort of had to leave Marvel and go into Image to sort of create this, kind of grow his lettering system, which is, God, I forget the name of it right now. Comic Craft. Thank you, Wikipedia. Um, Comic Craft, and it is interesting because he did this, and he's sort of the father of that style, and he created this company, Comic Craft, that is not just about the style, but also he was training letterers to use the style and do the style of lettering that he created. Now it's interesting because here comes the connection. He created the characters, the main characters of Elephant Man, specifically the main elephant, the main hippo, sorry, that you see here, which is called Hip Flask, as a character to promote the lettering on his ads, because he can use, license characters like from Marvel or DC or anything. So he created those characters in the 90s, and then in the 2000s, in early 2000s, he decided to create the stories around that and the other characters. So that's where the story comes from. So I thought it was really interesting to hear that. Aside from that, the story, it's very, very cool. If you love sci-fi, if you love sort of a lot of action, and especially if it involves, big creatures that are half human, half hippo, elephant, or other animals, this is the book for you, definitely. And we do have some interiors. Sorry, I should have flipped through it before, and you see the amazing illustrations on this one, and yeah, and you can see the elephant man ready to do battle right there. And that's it. Next up.
And then my pick is The Gull Yedin by Joe Kessler. Joe Kessler, if you recognize this name, is very well known for the title Windowpane. And this one stood out to me mostly because it's an entirely wordless graphic novel by Kessler. And if you knew anything about Kessler's previous work, and if you're really interested in experimental comics, this is something that you would definitely want to get into. This particular image, just to talk about the beginning of the story, just a little bit briefly, the premise. We have a boy who wakes up to find that his home is on fire, and he's saved by a shape-shifting gull, who may or may not be real. And the shape-shifting gull is leading him through the waters as the boat is adrift into the water, as you'll see here in the interior images. And the boy faces an uncertain future, recently orphaned because of the fire, and it's a question of whether or not the shape-shifting gull is actually helping or hindering the child as you're going through and going reading through. I say reading because you're really just looking at the images and interpreting based off of that. So I chose these two interior images because you could see how form changes, and the different art styles changes just slightly, which is really interesting. So this is what I'm talking about when I say experimental comics, because yeah, you could flip through this pretty quickly, but you really need to take your time to look through it to gain meaning from the story. And what seems like a folklore type of story, because that's kind of like the kind of the vibe that I'm getting off of this. What seems like that is like sort of imbued with themes of like grief as well as love and compassion, but like oddly enough, even cruelty as you're going through this, because like you're looking at this, it looks like a partially a kid's book, but it's not, right? It's like
Yeah.
it's like it's a very meaningful story that has an emotional impact um that can get really dark at times as well, and it's a beautiful experience to go through. So I recommend also giving this a go.
Very cool.
Mm.
And next up, my pick is Lost Falls, Volume 1, written by Kurt Pyers, illustrated by Antonio Fuso and Pierluigi Minotti. Now, this is a sort of a detective, sort of pulp crime, but also very psychological story. Um, and it talks about the main character, which you see here, sort of the silhouette of, and sort of standing in the rocks in front of the falls, and this detective Daniel Pynchon, which, sort of an homage to Thomas Pynchon, the author, who also writes this kind of story. And detective Daniel Pynchon just one suddenly wakes up uh, on the edge of a waterfall like this in the town Lost Falls, and he doesn't remember how he got there, or why he's there. So it's that sort of trope of, detective doesn't remember what happened and has to piece together the story. And the town of Lost Falls, obviously, it's not just there's the characters and the place itself. There's something mysterious and mystic happening in it. So it's a little bit of Twin Peaks meets Lovecraft Country, and also a little bit of, Thomas Pynchon, like Inherent Vice, where you get that vibe of like, is this a dream, or is this character on drugs, kind of thing. So that's what this story is sort of like. And we do have couple of illustrations here from the interior art, which is very beautiful. And you do get that sense. I mean, I automatically, when I saw the waterfall and I saw the character in front of the billboard that says Lost Falls, I automatically thought of Twin Peaks. I mean, it's just you get that vibe automatically. So yeah, this is going to be a great one too. And that's it for our picks, and then we're going to continue with highlighting some things. So G, you
Yeah,
first.
so has it already been a couple weeks? I think so.
It's been more
There
than a
were
couple of weeks, I think.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, definitely. My time is like really skewed right now. But you may have seen an announcement from DC, especially with the games.
James
James
Gunn.
Gunn, who announced his plans for the future or the new DCU with the movies. And so with that, we have the source material inspirations for those movies that are planned. So this is something that you definitely want to keep on your radar. So going through these titles, we have Batman and Robin Volume 1. This is Batman Reborn by Grant Morrison. We have Batman and Son, Grant Morrison. These are all new additions, as you'll see here. We have Creature Commandos by J.M. DeMatteis. And then we have Wonder Woman Paradise Found by Jimenez, and then Wonder Woman Paradise Lost, also by Phil Jimenez here. So definitely you want to we actually wanted to spotlight this so that
Yeah.
it's you're aware of
Well,
these new
and what
editions coming
happened?
out.
Yeah, what happened was that as soon as the announcement came out, it kind of took everybody by surprise,
Yeah.
and these were out of stock, out of print or stock, and DC is bringing them back. So we'll have these, and I'm sure they're going to reprinting some of the other stories that are part of that announcement. And as we get more news, we'll keep reprinting
Mhm.
different books, source material, like you said. Yep. And continuing highlighting some of the titles for for the month of May is Not Self, written by Christopher Sabella. Then we have Blood of the Virgin by Sammy Harkin. And then we have Captain Marvel by Kelly Thompson, Omnibus, Volume 1. And we have a regular trade edition and a direct market only cover on the right. And then we have Dark Web, the amazing Spider-Man and X-Men crossover that just happened at the beginning of this year by Seb Wells. So collecting that.
All right, continuing on, we have DC Pride, the New Generation, obviously from various creators in that one. We have Deadly Neighborhood Spider-Man by B. Earl. Every Day, the graphic novel by David Leviathan or Levithan. I always forget the
Leviathan.
pronunciation. Levithan. Uh, Levithan is this everyday title first came out as a prose novel. So this is the graphic novel adaptation of that. And then we have The Final Girls, written by Cara Ellison. And then Frankenstein New Worlds by Mike Mignola, Christopher Golden, and Thomas Snigoski.
And then we continue with Hotel Rem or Hotel REM. I think it's Rem because there's no dots in there. Hotel Rem by Zach Keller. Then we have Lot 13, written by Steve Niles. And we continue with Monsters Support Group, The Werewolf's Tale by Emily Hibbs. One of my favorites, The New Champion of Shazam by Josie Campbell. I love this story, and this is collecting that miniseries. And another one of my favorites, Poison Ivy Volume 1, The Virtuous Cycle by G. Willow Wilson.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and then with the Shazam movie that had recently come out, we have this new edition of Shazam and the Seven Magic Clans. I really like the story. It's like it was like when this was coming out, this was my jam because it was such a fun comic to follow. So to have this come out again in a new edition is great. This is by Jeff Johns. We have She-Hulk by Rainbow Rowell, Volume 2, Gen of Hearts. And following that, we have an omnibus, especially when we have the June 2nd Spider Into the Spider-Verse, the second animated movie that's going to come out on June 2nd. That will include Spider-Man 2099. We also have this omnibus with Peter David Volume 1 coming out. This is the main cover, and then we also have the direct market only cover. And then also, I really enjoyed this story that goes through Spider-Man across all different history of Spider-Man throughout the years, compiled in this story, this life story extra, trade paperback that you'll see here by Chip Zdarsky. Highly recommend also picking this up as well.
Yes, and we continue. Another one of my favorites all around, Star Trek Lower Decks by Ryan North and Chris Fenegolio. And then we Static Season 1 by Vita Ayala. And we continue with Star Wars, The Mandalorian Season 1, Part 2 by Rodney Barnes. And then we have X-23 Omnibus, Volume 1 by Craig Kyle. And we have a regular trade edition and cover, and a direct market only cover. And that is it for the highlights. We're going to leave you now with the rest of the list. And like I said, we're going to leave you with some music, which I just started playing. Thank you so much for watching. We hope you enjoyed it.